Mia here. So it's been a little while. I have some catching up to do. I don't have any children on or anything because I was about to go to bed and I was like, I don't want to keep putting it off. Um, I made some notes. I want to talk about week one. Like, we've had our first meeting and kind of what we went over, at least the stuff I can share. So it's interesting that the idea of a year and a day was more, I think, based on the moon cycles, which I thought was really cool. Um, I was told that this course is not a course on Wicca, and it's not necessarily like a prep to join some kind of a coven. It's very down to earth. Something that I wrote down that I thought was really interesting. Like I mentioned in the comments, Plain Toast No Jam is the person who. My cat Nicola just hop up once I started recording, so I'll turn the little camera on for him so he can say hi as long as he's here. Again, this is meant to be and feel like a conversation, so anyway, it's like learn by doing, which I love, and it's this idea of never-ending refinement, and I love that. Like lifelong teacher, lifelong student, so it just gets me more excited with this. Um, it's a journey. It's not like a starting or an ending. That was really cool. Sort of what can you make part of your day to day? And then one of the things that I was thinking about when Nikolai popped up is um, that Plain Toast No Jam is male, but his mentor was raised in like the Dianic way. And when I was reading that Drawing Down the Moon book, it's a very like heavy kind of feminist vibe to it. So it makes me more and more excited to kind of see how that has, if at all, right, like shaped the view and kind of the journey that he has had and things like that. So just that also kind of piqued my interest, and I'm curious to see where that goes. Um, so there's lots of good foundational things that was mentioned that we're going to be getting into. So things like, what are rituals, what's having an altar, how do you cast a circle, calling out the elements. And I read tarot, so I generally know about a lot of those kinds of things, warding, protecting yourself. And I think there's, because I've looked into mediumship, and some of the stuff that I am already doing lean into that. So this is, I guess, making more of a it's again that it's that ritual, it's developing that habit to get you so that your energy is more focused. I think when we were doing this first week, that was really really cool. The idea of the rule of three, and I think there's a piece of poetry that we're going to get into. We haven't gone through that yet. But we're going to talk about the moon and lunar phases. So a lot of it was like, here's a lot of stuff we're going to talk about. Here's what this will be and what it's not. And everything that was mentioned on this is the stuff that it will be and the stuff that it won't be. Again, just made me more excited to learn what is going to be there. This idea of believing in helping those who can't help themselves, and that the idea of having like a white witch or a black witch, and there's this gray nebulous area where it's is it okay sometimes to do bad things? Is it a revenge thing? Is it a protection thing? And I don't know if it came up in week one, because I think we've had another session after that or two. I'd have to look down. But I remember thinking at one point that I'm generally really happy, go lucky. I don't wish harm on anyone, but I'm a mother of two daughters, and I can completely see when I would have that mama bear type energy where I'm like, protecting my own. So I'm interested to see when we get there, and I start testing out all of those things. It's interesting that there's this phrase that came about that was the key is to believe in the success of everything that you do. And I've heard this before upon previous research that a lot of the work that you do in general, even if it's, whatever it is, that a lot of the work comes down to like the intention behind what you're doing, and as long as you are, that Thomas the Train, I think I can, and the more that you put that belief into it, the more it becomes that actuality. That's where you get this phrase of like what you put out into the world comes back to you, right? So if you're constantly thinking of positive things, you get positive out. It's very along that lines. Like there's a lot of that in many cultures and many things. So I thought that was interesting that it showed up here again. So one of the things that we were to do, we again started talking about the drawing down the moon. We didn't get very far into it, but it's interesting because we have Gardnerian or Alexandrian stuff. Again, a lot of that drawing down the moon book has a ton of the history on that, and there's also some people to look into. And I think that our homework in week 2 is going to be to look into some more of those people. So before the current calendar was created, the time was measured by the moon, and the lunar calendar is 13 months because it's just 28 days each, because that's the cycle of the moon. Oh, I might be leaving us. So it's cool because when we're starting this year and a day thing is about the time that the new Celtic year is starting, so that's really, really interesting. And so specifically, I think that there's some lists in the thing, and I have 2 lists. I have one where it's like, here's some main things that we're going to be looking into, like the main books we're going to be reading. And then I have another one where it's literally just any book that seems interesting. So if you don't have time to read a bunch of stuff, the main list would be like here's some things to read that's kind of a good history and things like that. Whereas the other list is just like a shotgun of here's things that would be kind of cool. So we have Drawing Down the Moon, which I showed in a talk about before. In our first week or 2 of class, we have really only gotten to like preface and like chapter 1, chapter 2, I think just getting into chapter 3 really recently. So we're going through it fairly slowly, which is nice because we're kind of taking it chunk by chunk. And then some of the other things that were mentioned, I haven't gotten this one yet, but Triumph of the Moon by Ronald Hutton. It'll be in one of the lists in the bottom. And then the other one is, and I did get this one, as you can see, I'm going to show the camera, but To Ride a Silver Broomstick by Silver Raven Wolf. So this is one of the ones that we're going to be covering. All I've gotten through so far is just a preface. I think I've gotten to about there. So not a lot in this one. But we've also gone through that Drawing Down the Moon one. So it was interesting because our homework was pretty much chapters 1 through 3 of this. And I think that we've, at this point, even though I'm sort of behind on my videos, I think we've gotten through chapters 1 through 3 of Drawing Down the Moon. And I think that when I was doing my first kind of pre-meeting video and we were just reading, I had gone through a bunch of quotes, and I remembered that I might have started chapter 3, but I don't think I finished chapter 3. So because we haven't really gotten to it in the homework one, I'm not going to get into chapter 4 yet. So, but I will kind of catch up on the things that I did for chapter 3. So let me pull out my same little yellow pages that I had before of notes. Again, these are just quotes from the book that as I was reading, they were things that really stood out to me. Of course, Nikolai would come back. He's just adorable. So when he's here, I want him to be hanging out with us. In my Discord, I have a picture of him curled up under a tree. It's really cute. Okay, so let me pull these out. So again, these are my like handwritten notes. So in chapter 3 of Drawing Down the Moon, so kind of finishing up, and I might have done this one in the other video, but it has been a while, so I'm sorry if it's a repeat. But I'm pulling them out and sticking them away, so I won't repeat them in future videos. So I've made myself a good job on that. But on page 24 to 25, and the edition I have is, it's one of the newer ones, because I know that they all have different pages of different stuff. I have a link to the exact one I bought in my comment section. This one says that it's the 23rd printing, copyright 1979, 1986, but I think there's another date on here. This edition was expanded in 2006, so it's at least that new. Yeah, like I said, I'll have a link to it, but page 24 to 25, there's a quote from Harold Moss about monotheism, because again, chapter 3 is a lot of building up the what is Wicca, what do these things come from, and stuff like that. So the quote was, "Today, in place of a single Christianity with multiple gods, we see a shattered Christianity, each sect worshiping a slightly different god." I thought that was really interesting, because you have a wide variety of people who worship some form of that sort of Christian belief, right? You have many different belief systems and things that are slightly different, and everything's a little bit tweaked about just that one thing in general. So I thought that was really interesting. On page 25, the author says, "Monotheistic religions have long assumed that the worshiper who stands before a statue or a grove, that such a worshiper invests divinity in those things," meaning the statue or the grove, "and nothing more. And contrarily, that other people's worship of neutral, omnipotent, and unknowable deities is necessarily pure and sublime." It's really interesting that, because again, it's this like judging other people and what they're worshiping, what their realities are, what feels good to them and true to them. And that's a lot of chapter 3 is sort of noticing that stuff. And then I have David Miller, James Hillman, Robert Elwood. They all have different like arguments. I have them as a note in the book. Their views are really interesting things. There's another quote on page 32 from Isaac Bonowitz. "The pagans were tolerant for the simple reason that many believed their gods and goddesses to be connected with the people or the place. If you go to another place, there are different gods and goddesses, and if you're staying in someone else's house, you're polite to their gods. They're just as real as the ones you left back at home." I thought that was an interesting view, and I really loved that view. the idea that it's just very accepting of somebody else's view, somebody else's perspective. On page 32 to 33, another quote from the book that I thought was interesting was, "I do not believe in gods as real personalities on any plane or in any dimension, yet I do believe in gods as symbols or personifications of universal principles. The Earth Mother is the primal seed, source of the universe. I believe in gods perceived in nature, perceived as a storm, a foresight, a forest spirit, the goddess of the lake, etc. Many places and times of year have a spirit or power about them. Perhaps these are my gods." So this is part of that, it's really cool that the author throughout the book, and it's one of the things I've really enjoyed throughout the book, it's not like here's the author and the author's point of view only. The author talks about many experiences they have with other people, with pagans and people who wouldn't consider themselves pagans, many different people and views, and a lot of the stories that come from that and the quotes when she's interviewing all these people, I think honestly is what makes the book as good as it is, right? Because it's not just one person's view, but it becomes more of a collective view, which is just amazing. So it says, page 33, there's Neo-pagans in the craft, followers of Wicca. Maybe they might be considered duotheists, conceiving of deity as the goddess of the moon, earth, and sea, and the god of the woods, the hunt, and the animal realm. So the god and goddess kind of a thing, right? Like, page 33 also, she was quoting another pagan, Alison Harlow, comes up a lot. "Many people cannot understand how I find her a part of my reality and accept the fact that your reality might be something else. But for me, this is in no way a contradiction because I am aware that my reality and my conclusions are a result of my unique genetic structure, my life experience, and my subjective feelings. And you are a different person whose same experience of whatever may or may not be out there, or of whatever may or may not be out there, will be translated in your nervous system into something different. And I can learn from that." The same person said when they were trying to define paganism that, quote, "Everyone has different experiences." And I think that of all the quotes I had from chapter 3, that one was the one that felt the truest to me. And I think that the most interesting thing that was also sort of in my notes and that we've talked about is that sort of everyone's path looks a little different. Everyone's going to believe slightly different things. Everyone has different points of view. And I think, again, that quote was like exactly what it was. Cherry on the top of things. So I think that was like a really good summation. And everyone who's going to read the book, because it is a lot of information, everyone's going to get something slightly different. So if you've read the book, I would love to know what some of your favorite quotes are, or what was some of the things that called to you the most. But again, I'm really curious about how this is going to go. I'm just trying to look over my notes for week 1 to see if there's anything that I sort of missed when I was talking about. One thing that we will be doing in the course that I'm again more curious about is it says to figure out what we work best with. What is our witchcraft? Because there's a lot of people who they have this idea of like you're a green witch, maybe you do stuff with more plants and things like that, or is it more of a spiritual thing, or do you do the herbs or potions or spells or whatever? I have no idea because we're getting into it, right? But the idea that there's many different sections out there and topics to explore, and sort of everybody has strength and weaknesses and things that they're called to, and we're sort of going to do a little bit of each, so that we're going to explore some of all of that so that we kind of get a feel for it, and we will then get to know what feels right for us, and then from there we can sort of explore more. And I don't know if it was in week 1 or week 2, but it was mentioned that, this is all basic stuff that we're going to be doing over like the first year, and that maybe in the next year we'll do other stuff. And because I've been so excited about it up until now and still going, the fact that the possibility that there's more continuing learning stuff next year kind of thing, I'm like, yes, I'm here for it. So again, thank you for joining me. The series is meant to feel like a conversation. It's meant to definitely track my learning. I'm just as eager and excited as I was in the beginning. What I can definitely tell, and I think it was actually week 3, but I want to mention it now because I just mentioned this book. I think our homework for week 2 was to read the first 2 pages of or not 2 pages, but like preface area. And I think it was mentioned that some people are not fans of Silver Ravenwolf, and because maybe she can come across as soft. And it was interesting because when I read it, I didn't get the perception of soft as much as what felt, what I felt from it was more of that, like, I'm going to choose to think positively. I'm going to choose my attitude being gratitude and to look for the beauty in things. I didn't necessarily get I'm not going to do anything bad. Like, I think it mentions potentially, and I'd have to look again, because there are so many people, but a lot of it is that they're, I think they're a mother of like 4, I think. Silver Ravenwolf. That sounds about right, but I'll look again. But I got this feeling of that she's choosing happiness instead of, that you kind of create your own reality in that regard, and that she's choosing happiness. But like I said, I'm generally a very positive person, but if I need to mama bear out on somebody, like, that's a different thing. So, but yeah, no, I'm still excited. I mentioned up to chapter 3 about drawing down the moon. I'm not going to talk about what I read in this book yet, because after week 1, essentially it was like, get the book. I think the homework for week 2 potentially was more reading that. Something that was mentioned in week 1 that we're working towards getting better at is meditating and kind of, just being in your body. We sort of are starting at a low number, like at 1 minute, and we want to work up to 5 minutes plus. And the reason for that is a lot of times the more you can just be, it gives you a lot of calm and helps you use that kind of moving forward and working with some other stuff. So if you are on a journey very similar to mine, I would, if you're not already doing so, I would recommend beginning to do some meditation. And again, start it in small increments. And something that I know because I've done some of this stuff in the past, right? Again, I'm coming in, filling in holes to my knowledge, and I've kind of pulled from some places. But meditation isn't always about always having a clear mind. It's not holding on to thoughts, not having a thought float by and then you pulling it down and now you're living in that thought. If a thought comes, it's okay to, acknowledge it and then release it. I think that's the problem that a lot of people have, and they start this and there's so many things that come at your mind that it can feel very overwhelming, and then you're like, well, I must not be doing it right. because my mind isn't just blank and clear. I can't do that. I would say if you're definitely starting, don't assume that you're going to start with this clear blank field, right? But really, the effort should be that when you have some kind of a thought that comes in, to just kind of acknowledge it was there and then release. It can be helpful to focus on your breathing. And I think in week 3, my mentor mentioned the box method for breathing, and it's something that I've actually taught my children before. I was going to talk about it probably in the next one, but you're just breathing to a certain count, and that can be very helpful with meditating. So if you haven't started meditating, I would definitely recommend meditating. Again, let me know in the comments if you've read Drawing Down the Moon. Again, I think in my videos I've gotten up to chapter 3, and I think the next ones I'll potentially talk about the silver broomstick one and some other stuff that goes on, but let me know how it goes. I know this video is a little longer too, but again, it's meant to feel like a conversation. We'll see how the next one goes. It'll probably be a little shorter, but I didn't want to try to keep too much in my mind. I wanted to kind of get some more of it out there. So yeah, hopefully you, if you're on a journey very similar to mine, are just as excited. And I hope to see you for the next ones.